As human beings, we are scared of a lot of things. Spiders, darkness, other human beings. As a fact of the matter, we are even scared of the results of the upcoming presidential elections. Considering we know the forerunners of both the parties. But today, I'm here to talk about the one word that we dread the most. The one word that we wish we could erase from our dictionary. And yet, it is the same word that should be on the top of our bucket list. The same word that we should be desiring for the most. And that word is failure. Ever since I was a child, there were two things that I wanted to grow up to be. Either a public speaker or a novelist. And on my parents' list of all the things that I shouldn't grow up to be, these made to the top two spots. Well, I don't blame them, because their list stemmed from one sole necessity: survival. I was born in a cluttered house in a suburb of Bombay, the city of dreams back in India. My mom was a homemaker, and my dad worked with a chemical firm, precisely making 5,000 rupees a month, which at the current exchange rate precisely equals to $74.95. All through my childhood, all I saw my mom was adjust and readjust every single cent in the budget towards groceries, knickknacks, and school fees. I have also seen my mom cut soap bars into half so that they would last longer, and even give up on fruit, milk, and vegetables so that the kids would be better fed. I have even seen my mother avoid going to see a doctor to save as meager as 20 cents. Because in India, medical bills are not covered by insurance. And yet, I was fairly certain that I was willing to struggle to convert my passion of being a public speaker into my profession. Until something happened, and it changed my life forever. My dad, back then, had quit his job with the chemical firm and started his own business. And my mom had joined him in to rake in some extra cash. After a 12-hour-long workday and finishing all the errands in the kitchen, she was dead asleep, and I was lying next to her. My head was pillowed against her shoulder, and my arm wrapped around her stomach. In her sleep, she put her hand over her head, and that's when I realized a hole burned in the armpit area of her blouse. That made me realize that my mom had been wearing the same blouse for over 3 years now, because after just providing the basics for the family, she didn't even have money to buy clothes for herself. The realization was gut-wrenching. But the realization that came next literally pulled the carpet from beneath my feet. I realized that my parents had exhausted every day of their youth and every cent of their hard-earned money to make sure that I would study and secure myself in a profession so that I wouldn't have to struggle the way they were currently. By potentially choosing to be a speaker, potentially choosing the struggle, did I deserve to give my parents and see them suffer even when they were old? The answer in my head was crystal clear. I knew that I had to temporarily set aside my dream of being a public speaker until I could fend myself financially. I decided to be a computer engineer, a profession considered financially rewarding, and channelized every ounce of energy in my body towards the one thing that mattered to me. But little did I know that I had signed up for a path full of failures. Failures that would shatter the sheer belief in me that I could ever be successful in my life, and yet give me the strength to pick myself back up and keep moving on. The very first failure came my way when I graduated with just average marks out of high school. Most people in my community went on to convince my parents and me that I was just an ordinary child with less than ordinary intellect, who stood no chance to withstand all the great competition that the engineering folks had to offer. Some even told my parents that they shouldn't waste their money on their daughter because the copyright to dream and thereby have dreams come true was only reserved for the wealthy. Looks like I took their advice way too seriously, because when I took my engineering entrance exam, I graduated with less than average marks. But the truest blow came in my face when I failed in 4 subjects in 3 consecutive semesters in engineering. If I had failed for 1 more subject, my school would have thrown me out. I was nowhere close to being a public speaker or a novelist, the things that I thought I always wanted to be. And clearly, I sucked at being an engineer. To top this all, since the banks had refused to give me loans, my parents had trusted my abilities and put their meager savings on my education. Thus, the whole objective of being financially secure and sound was down the drain, because I had left my family much more poorer than where we started out from in the first place. By every conventional measure, I was the biggest failure I knew of. And yet, I stand in front of you guys, advocating the many advantages of failure and telling you that failure should be on the top of your bucket list. I know, you must be thinking, she is a psychopath. Well, I'm not, because, clearly I'm not, because my worst failures taught me lessons that not even my best successes could. My failures taught me that I had way more willpower than I could ever think of, and that if I set my head to something, the most impossible people would reach out to me and the most impossible doors would open up for me. But besides these 3 things, failure taught me 3 most key important things. 1, failure taught me to trust myself. When you fail at something, the world makes sure that you are aware that you failed at it and doesn't leave a single stone unturned to label you as a loser. That's what it exactly did for me. But failure teaches you to silence those skeptics, pick yourself back up, and keep moving on. In my case, one night I was sitting by the windowsill, looking out the window. It was pretty dark outside, and I was dunked in a pool of apathy and self-loathe and self-criticism. I had almost given up on engineering when I got into this little exercise. I picked up a binder and a pen and wrote down all the reasons of why it was essential for me to make it as an engineer. I came up with as many as 15 reasons, but in doing this whole exercise, I realized 2 things. 1, that my will to be successful and climb out of poverty way exceeded than my fear of being labeled as a loser. That is to say, my will to keep trying way exceeded than the turmoil in me that said it was okay to give up. And 2, in this whole entire universe, inhabited by 7.1 billion people, there was just 1 person who knew my truest potential. Just 1 person. And that person was me, myself. And that if I didn't trust my potential, the world would not recognize it too. Once these things I realized, I made peace with failure and did the most to overcome what I had been in. The first thing I did was reach out to my professors to get a copy of all the papers I had failed in. I asked them for their feedback and asked them how I could improve on it. I reached out to really strange people to improve on concepts that I was weak in. Slowly and steadily, I started working on everything that I fell short on. The result? In the 4th semester, I not only ended up passing those 4 subjects, but I ended up being in the top 10% of the class. From almost being thrown out of school to being in the top 10% of the class. Trusting myself was all it took. Second, failure taught me that it is okay to take a detour to accomplish your dreams. When I was doing engineering, one of my friends came up to me and told me that I shouldn't be doing so, because if I did that, I would eventually give up on my dreams of being a public speaker and fall in the rat race of making money. Maybe she was true, but what we need to understand here is that there is a very fine line between giving up on our dreams and taking a detour to accomplish it. In my case, I opted for the latter. Instead of choosing a jittery, shaky, uncertain path, I opted for something that was way more steady. I went on to be an engineer, worked with Accenture Services Private Limited, one of the greatest companies, pooled in enough money with the help of my parents, and got myself to United States of America, the greatest nation, to do my master's. Whilst doing my master's, I rediscovered my love for public speaking, polished on my existing skill set, and today I speak at least 1 conference in a month, if not more. And I'm halfway through the manuscript of my first novel. So what I would like to summarize is that the path to achieve your dreams may deviate drastically from what you foresaw. Let me repeat this again. The path to achieve your dreams may deviate drastically from what you foresaw, but the onus lies on you to never lose the sight of your dreams and keep working towards it. If you can do so, I promise you that sooner or later, you would find your life steering itself towards your dreams, and before you might have known, you might have already achieved it. And third, failure taught me that obstacles redirect you to bigger opportunities. Sometimes when we are working with a certain goal in our mind, we realize that we are faced with way more obstacles than we would be faced otherwise. But we have to realize that obstacles come for a reason, to redirect you to bigger opportunities. When we are working towards something, more often than not, we have our blinders on. So much so that a potential bigger opportunity lying just to your current opportunity might be missed by you. But when you are faced with obstacles, you are forced to break apart those blinders and look and explore for bigger opportunities. In my case, when I failed in those 4 subjects, I was forced to break the reticent cocoon that I was living in and reach out to my professors. That made me a great student. It forced me to reach out to strangers, and that taught me the art of making friends. And moreover, it taught me one of the most important qualities that I cherish today, and that quality is networking. Thus, I hope that with these things, I have proven to you that it is important to put failure on your bucket list. And if not, hear me out. Today, a girl who was told that she's absolutely ordinary and can go nowhere in life. Today, a girl of 2 absolutely ordinary Indian parents, one a homemaker and another making $74.95, stands in the United States of America, the world's greatest nation, on the stage of TEDx, the world's largest annual global conferences, proving it to you that if you put failure on your bucket list, success will follow. Thus, if you fail, do not be afraid. Win it, conquer it. Thank you so much.